What's going on?
What is up? Look at that happy face eating. Get your breakfast in. Yes, my
Yeah.
dear. I am so
How,
happy to see you
I
finally.
know. How are you?
Oh, I'm so happy to see you. I am great. Can't
Good. I'm
complain.
happy to see
Blessed and
you.
highly
I'm happy to
favored.
see my teacher. Yes. You know,
Always.
I'm super
Good.
excited. What's going on?
Well, I have been doing a lot of studying, as you know,
Yeah. I know
always
you have.
studying. And so we're wrapping up another 500-hour yoga teacher training here for myself. And in this process, I have been working a lot with this new movement of social justice and empowerment, racial equity, equanimity, marginalization. And as you know, and if you didn't know, but as a lot of our followers know, Jai Bhakti Yoga Foundation prides itself on working with marginalized communities. And in conversation with another gentleman in my Off the Mat Into the World training with Yoga Purpose in Action, he had mentioned what has happened to yoga. And specifically, what is yoga to men? I'm a man, and to me, yoga is a totally different world. And I found yoga for myself as a way of connecting to myself again. But I don't find a lot of other men have been embracing yoga because it looks very much the cover of Yoga Journal, which, by the way, the cover of Yoga Journal this month is a man on the cover,
Really?
which I'm very
I love
excited
that.
about. So I'm
Yeah.
definitely going to be taking a picture and sharing that. But it had been mentioned in this training that men, one time Yoga Journal put a man on the cover and they almost went bankrupt. So
Really?
this was a big issue when they brought it up, especially when you're going to claim something like that live on a big call. So
Right.
when they said that the first time, it kind of broke my heart. When they said it the second time, it was when it kind of struck a chord, because yoga was created for men. It was actually created for 15-year-old boys to go out and go to war. And so
Right.
yoga gurus, the most of them are male. The father of yoga is the father of yoga, Krishnamacharya. So women have really dominated this workout, this yoga practice, and we see that men have found it very uncomfortable to approach a yoga class, or they look around and they see the other bodies and they say, "Oh, I'll never be able to do that." Very intimidated. So What's Your Revolution happens to speak along empowering men to live their healthiest versions of themselves. And you've been doing this since 2017.
Yeah.
You're not just my friend Charles Corprew, you are Dr. Charles Corprew. Okay. And you're not just one of my students, but you're my teacher as well. And so I'm excited to have this conversation with you now that you have a kind of an idea as to, we're going to get into the world of yoga and healing arts and wellness and how this has impacted Dr. Corprew's revolution,
Okay.
and getting Dr. Corprew to speak about what's your revolution from his perspective, starting from how did you enter the world of yoga and what brought you to it?
Um, actually, um, Chelsea, Chelsea Lloyd Hilton, who's Newdick now. Her husband, one of my good friends, my brother Chandler Newdick. He and I did a fellowship together with the Kellogg Foundation a couple of years ago, and he introduced me to his partner at the time, Chelsea Hilton, and she is a yoga teacher in New Orleans. And I want to say, I want to say there was one evening where Chandler was like, "Hey, Chelsea's teaching a class. Do you want to come?" And I had done yoga as a part of P90X, but I hadn't done it for a couple of years. And so I was like, "Yeah, I'll go." And it was one of the hardest classes. It was one of the hardest things that I had done. She kind of guides it. It's like it's going to be an easy class. It won't be hot. Uh, it was about 95 degrees in the class, and Chelsea is an amazing teacher, like you. Um,
Love Chelsea.
and but it was tough. It was very very tough. But I came out of there with a tremendous feeling and tremendous sense of gratitude, a tremendous feeling of accomplishment and peace. And so she came on my show. She came on the What's Your Revolution show with Jamo, another wonderful teacher in the space, male teacher from Africa, and I took um, my first real class without Chelsea, with you at the Church of Yoga,
Mhm.
and it was just an amazing experience. I remember coming in and not really knowing you, but you were so welcoming and so appreciative of the class. I actually was like, is this what does this feel like? What does she feel like? Because as a man, you're like, wait, I don't know, this doesn't. And I think after a couple of classes taking with you at the church, I felt more like I'm going to open up. I'm going to open up to her, and just allow the space to be, a part of who I am. And you are an amazing teacher, tough as well. I was like, oh my God, it's Monday night. I'm going to go to this tough class, but it was always good. So that was my foray in, whether it was you or JMO or Chelsea really ingratiating me to yoga and then accepting me into the practice. And then me realizing that you don't have to be perfect, that it is the practice of yoga. And once I got to that mindset, it was like, okay, I can do this and continue to practice.
Mhm. And have you been continuing to practice?
I not until I moved. So when I moved from New Orleans last month, I think I've practiced probably about twice. I did meditate this morning, and so
Good.
I'm in a better mood. But um, I know where I am in this space here in Virginia Beach with my family. It's not a big, it doesn't resonate with the practice here, and so I need to find a home. I need to find a space that, as you know, in New Orleans, excuse me, New Orleans has a space that the conversations are around inclusivity and diversity, and I always felt at home. There were certain places I felt at home going, and other places I did not. So
Mhm.
it's the same thing here. Is there a space here in Virginia Beach, or when I move to Durham in a couple of months, is there a space where I feel at home to continue my practice?
Absolutely. And I think that's a really good point that you bring up because it comes back to being at home, feeling the om in the space that you're in. And how did you find that om when you entered the Church of Yoga and saw other men practicing yoga
Mm-hmm.
along? I mean, you were literally right next to two or three other men in the front row
Yeah,
in the yoga
yeah,
class. My classes tend to
exactly.
have a lot of dudes in them for some reason. So they like the
Mm-hmm.
power, they love the energy and the spirituality that I bring to the practice. So I feel all of you had this beautiful Shakti energy. You had this really great energy in being able to be vulnerable. Can you speak to that feeling om, vulnerable, instead of being so stoic and I
Mm-hmm.
can't, I don't want people to look at me and look like I'm a bitch. I'm not a sissy, like, I want you to be open. And now that you even said that at one point, you're like, whoa, like, okay, you know what? I'm
Right.
more open to her. Like
Mm-hmm.
she's a very different spirit, so let's talk about that.
Yeah, I think that, I'm going to put it back on you, and how you create a space for your entire class, and, the warmth that even before the class starts, like the hug, the acceptance, like this is your space, I'm your teacher, I'm here with you. And
Mhm.
so that in itself creates a welcoming aspect, particularly for somebody who's new in the space. I've done yoga, in Mississippi, here in Virginia, different places across the country, and it doesn't feel, when you don't feel welcome. And
Mhm.
that's what I felt. I felt welcome. And so that welcoming feeling also allowed me to let down my insecurities about what is yoga. I don't have to be perfect at this. I don't have to be perfect. And I'm going to fall. I'm going to not get this position right. I'm going to breathe incorrectly. All the things that happen as you grow in the space. I think for me, finding, as you say, home, I equate that, like you said, to home was seeing other people around me who wanted to be involved in my growth, my ability to practice, and seeing other men who had grown up in this space as well, who could, position themselves, or we'll say contort themselves in a yoga position, like, because it was practice. And it wasn't like people were looking around like, why can't you do this? It was like, hey, it's okay, this practice of acceptance. And I think that if we had the ability as a country, as a society at large, to practice this acceptance of each other,
Mhm.
maybe we wouldn't see the divisiveness as we're seeing now. But yoga, I think the yoga community is, at least in New Orleans, is this space where come as you are, and love the church, hate the church for what it is. Um, it does welcome people from all across the city to come in and practice and to donate. So there's no set price per se, and that ability to donate and be a part of something, I think, it provides people that opportunity to say, I at least want to try this. So I know I've seen in different spaces people come in who have no clue what yoga is and say, I just wanted to come and try, and the church was welcoming to that.
Absolutely. Yes, yes. And New Orleans in general, I feel, has a little way of being very welcoming
Mm-hmm.
to all kinds, all aspects, all facets. I want to ask you something about how What's Your Revolution started. What was it that you saw in the health and fitness and wellness industry that was lacking in men that inspired you to create What's Your Revolution? And what was that revolution in you?
Right, and so that's where that was the impetus for What's Your Revolution. The short story is that the 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 mantra or the question came from listening to Tom Friedman, Pulitzer Prize winning author at the New York Times. He spoke at my graduation in 2011 at Tulane, and he began talking about revolution. I won't tell the whole story, but for me, it's been asking for the last 9 years, how do I be a better man? And I know in conversation with other men, there is this, I want to be better. And so, what does that look like for me? And what does that look like for us as a collective, as men? And so that's why I start the show with a show for men and the people who love them, because we're on this journey together, whether, whoever your partner may be, people love men. And whether it's another man, another woman, um, transgender, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
people love. And so I want everybody who listens to the show that yes, the show is for men, but it's about the people that love us as well. And so I know that the work that I try to do on myself every day. And so I try to then impart and then employ information out to men so they can try and hopefully do better every day. And so that's the impetus and the crux of What's Your Revolution. It's the larger question, the organization is that everyone has that ability to ask that question, what's your revolution? And to internalize that, like, how do I transform myself? And then in transforming myself, can that impact my neighbor or my nephew or my cousins or my best friends? And can my revolution impact a community of people, right? Does that community of people see my revolution where I have a larger? So I'm always trying to push people to think about your revolution shouldn't just be for you. It should
Mm-hmm.
be for a greater good, a greater purpose, a greater number of people.
Right. Like, don't be asking for a miracle, be somebody's miracle.
Yeah, yeah,
Right. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, and that's why I love the show. I love the ability for people to hear from not only like celebrities, famous authors, but everyday people like myself who just want to, tell their stories.
I love that. I'd like to ask about the space where you open up for us, and you hold the space. What you offer through your podcast is a way that we can hold space for men to open up and share these areas. And in light of COVID and what's happened now, and having, we mentioned how welcoming the space was when we got to see each other and I got to hug you and touch you and that sense of touch. And now we don't have the sense of touch. And actually, a lot of my students, male students, have been reaching out because the conversation has been around being vulnerable, lonely, sad, misunderstood, um, disassociated. How have you been finding through your work and personally as well that now not being able to touch those that we used to touch and hug and see on the norm, and then now being in this space of isolation? Is this helping to become introspective? Are we able to work? Is this probably a tool, a blessing in disguise, to tune into looking internal investigation of revolutionizing ourselves? What can you offer in that space to men to
Mm.
empower them so that they don't feel this way anymore? It's a hard space right now.
I don't know honestly, Christina, if I'm the best one to offer, anything that's empowerment, because all of those adjectives that you described early on are things that I have I continue to feel every day. And I was just talking to a friend of mine before. I was like, I probably need to have a conversation with my therapist very soon.
And here we are
But
having a
yeah,
conversation, right?
here we are having a conversation. But
Yeah.
my love languages are touch and quality time, and the inability to touch, to have consistent and regular touch, intimate touch is has been arduous, and so this internalization of when does this end has been tough, and so that feeling of loneliness, and that feeling of loneliness that can come and stay, during this pandemic. And I was thinking, I moved. It was easy for to be in New Orleans, to where I live, walk outside and go walk in the park. Now being home, that's a little, and the park provided. Let me say that the park provided some solace and some therapeutic opportunities. But that's different here. I'm going to experience a winter, for the first time in 15 years, a winter in a pandemic when you can't get outside, when you can't get, and so it's going to be interesting. I think that, I read a lot about being able to sit in this space of being alone and lonely. And so I think that is a opportunity for us to seek that space, but I don't want people, at least from my purview, I don't want people to be able to sit in that, because I think that, from a psychologist perspective, that over time will just promote like longer bouts of insecurity and sadness and potentially depression. So learning to sit with that, learning to be alone, and learning to sit in the discomfort of being lonely, but also know that the research says that community, one of the tenets of community, one of the tenets of longevity is community.
Yeah.
Right? It is community, and so making sure that you have the ability to reach out, even now with Zoom or different things, to reach out to your community, to have those conversations. So, when we have the ability to go back and touch, you haven't lost that sense of what community is. And yoga provides that. Yoga, that's a great thing about yoga, is that it does provide this space. It's particularly if you're going time and time again and you're seeing the same people, the same practices. What I loved about going to the church was you always provided a little sermon, a little sermonette that kind of, focused in on what our practice was going to be. That in itself provides community. That's, the church. And so the Church of Yoga. So that little sermonette was a part of the community building that I loved as well.
Yes. I feel it's really important. I love how you, every day on your Instagram page, you always post something motivational and inspiring. And I find it the same in yoga class. When I teach my class, I ensure that I begin the class just very inspiring. Sometimes it's going to hit you. It's going to hit you hard in your heart and you're going to cry in the class. And other times you're going to be shifted angry, or you're going to be different emotions. You're going to be able to experience something with the words that come out. So because you do a lot of work with words, words are powerful. Language is powerful. How do you suggest, from your perspective and the way that you communicate to your community, the power of words, what we take in and what we nourish ourselves with? This week we've been working on, the last 2 weeks, and we're transitioning to virtual online yoga studio to provide a community starting next week. And so I'll be offering classes online where we can do this. And one thing is that we're working on different layers of our physical being to reach this source, this space of oneness, and being accepting of where we are right now, and being able to reach out in community in any different aspect of spaces that are supportive, such as a podcast that you can hear a voice that's soothing and warming in the heart, that somebody else is going through something like you're going through. And the words, the language that we use can empower or can digress somebody's progression. Can you speak to how words that you nourish yourself with can help you to move forward and help you to break some certain conditioned beliefs over time?
Yeah. So words are powerful, as you mentioned. And, I try to think about, putting myself in a positive mindset. So the mind is a powerful tool, but you have to control your mind, and you you have to think about, like you said, what are you ingesting and what are you saying to yourself? And the concept of self-love not only talks about how you're, how you're loving yourself, but how are you talking to yourself? How you talking to yourself? And um, that is something that is critical because the mind will create negativity. It's a very, as I said, it's a very, very powerful thing. It creates negativity, and you have to make sure you're talking to yourself in a very loving manner. Posting little things about yourself. I'm creative. I'm loving. I'm wonderful. I'm artistic. I am okay. I am enough. Things like that. Because I think that I don't even think I know that the mind will allow us to go into these deep dark spaces, and in going into these deep dark spaces, we then begin to internalize these negative things. We also have to say, no, I'm not that. All right. And one of the things that, like I just said, is that I am enough. We often think that because of the constant barrage of social media, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, right, and we're seeing the glamour of people's lives, we may question ourselves about whether we are enough. And that causes anxiety and depression. And saying to yourself, this is the best of people, right? They don't, the underneath is not shown. Understanding that this is who you are and that you don't have to be anything else, and to continually tell yourself that I am okay, that I am enough. And it's not easy. It is, I'm not sitting in here to say that I say that every day and it works, but you have to continue to, when you're going into negative spaces, you have to pull back and say, no, I can reshape my thoughts.
My favorite question I got told not so long ago by one of my teachers was, is yoga working for you now? Every single time something happens, is yoga working for you now? And I've never stopped thinking about that, because it brings me back to pulling myself out of that train of thought, right? Those chitti vrittis, those ripples in the waves, the ripples in the consciousness, right. And pulls me back to this centered space, which I love very much. I love that you talk so much about this, because it just is so inspiring. In the next few minutes that we have, because I know you have a lot to do today and I don't want to keep you, I want to share with our viewers, how can they connect with you? Where can they find your podcasts? And what information would you like to give them as a takeaway to empower them today?
No worries. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. It's always good to see my teacher, and I say that with tremendous love and affection and gratitude for what you've shown me in this space, and always, and the ability for you to touch so many people's lives. So I am tremendously grateful for that. People can find me on Twitter, Instagram at What's Your Revolution, both my personal Facebook page, Charles Corprew, or our company Facebook page, which is WY Revolution. You can find that. Or people can email me at drcharlescorprew@gmail.com. And I'm happy to, work with anyone as, they think about what we think is the most thought-provoking question of people's lives. What's your revolution? And so many people, when they come up to me and be like, oh my God, you're the revolution guy, you're the guy, you've asked this question. Or what really gets me is when people say, I love your question, but I can't find the answer, but it makes me really think about what I need to do to come up with this answer. We all have the power to shift our lives. We all have the power to reshape our lives. And revolutionaries are encapsulated in every one of us. We just have to take the opportunity to say, I can, I will, and then move forward to do it. It is a very empowering question for people when you think about, how do I answer this question? Because it makes people say, where do I need to look critically to change? And so, excuse me, that is what I implore people to do. Think about the answer to this question. We think it's the most thought-provoking question of people's lives. And I am here to help you if you need some way to answer that question. And I can see that my teacher is doing and continuing her revolution. So it is a joy to see.
Yes, saving those lives one breath at a time, right?
Exactly.
And my last question for you, darling, is what would you like to see more of come to fruition in developments in the near now future for men and male identified community members as we progress in the world of yoga and meditation and the healing arts?
No doubt. One of the things I want to say to men is it's okay to put on your yoga pants, you know, and go to yoga class. That is okay. I wear the same running tights that are now my yoga pants, and I'm happy with that. It's fine. You can go put on your shorts, do what you need to do. Nobody's judging you. Just
Nobody's
go and be
looking.
in, yeah, go and be in the space. Look, I love going, taking my shirt off because it's gonna be hot. I got my yoga pants on, and I'm okay. You will be too. And so that's what I say to men. Go in the space, have a good time, let your guard down. Find a great teacher. That will allow you to come and be yourself in the space. Know that you don't have to be perfect. Know that it is the practice of yoga, and that's the thing. The practice. We are continually practice. We are continually growing, and as men, this is a great space to grow and really find an understanding of yourself and to push yourself because yoga is still, no matter what I do, whether it's running triathlon, whether it's doing CrossFit workouts, it is still the hardest workout that I ever do.
Thank you, my darling. I love you so
I
much.
love you too. I love you too.
I can't wait to see you again one day
Yeah.
soon.
I'll
Much
be back
love
in New
to
Orleans
you.
sometime. Yeah, you
Come,
too.
come. Please come home
I will.
soon. Home. Home base. We love you. I
Take
love
care.
you. I will
I
see you
love
again
you.
soon.
All right.
Namaste.
Take care. Namaste.